Blake Baker explains why he decided to stay at LSU. You'll hear it next. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Blake Baker on Friday surprised a lot of people when he made his announcement that he was staying at LSU, foregoing opportunities to be the head coach at either Memphis or his alma mater, Tulane. Now, I know a lot of you, and shout out to our everydayers, caught the episode I did live on Friday night shortly after that news broke. And if you care to go back and check it out, I'd strongly encourage that. But really what we said was there was a few things that weighed in. I know there was a lot of feeling from media in New Orleans that felt that Baker was going to take the Tulane job, and that it sort of started to percolate Thursday. One of the things we told you here is a brief interaction that I had with Blake. Again, I'm not in any way saying that this was a long interaction or anything like that, but it was very clear to me based on a brief interaction that we had that he was honestly and sincerely torn on the decision to take a head coaching job at his alma mater or to remain at LSU. But there were a few things that made sense. LSU made the money work as they effectively matched Tulane's offer, as we know now, at $3 million a year with bonuses and escalators that can go north of that. He obviously has a path to being a Power 4 coach and a championship coach, which is his goal through the coordinator ranks, which LSU certainly could lay out. A lot of the frustration in 2025 of being so good defensively, only to have the offense be so inept, I think, was something that was very frustrating. Well, with Lane Kiffin coming in, you're going to have some balance, a complementary brand of football on that side of the ball. Look, Blake Baker has undeniably made LSU's defense better. In 23, the year before Blake Baker got here, LSU was 108th in the country in total defense, 81st in scoring. They went in total defense from 108 to 61 to 25 this year. In scoring, they went from 81 the year before, to 59 to 15 this year. So they're dramatically improving under Blake Baker. So he knows there's a path as well. But the thing that we talked about here Friday that was maybe the thing most people weren't aware of or don't always factor in were family considerations. And when Blake Baker did an interview with Jacob Hester and Matt Flynn on Off the Bench on 104.5 ESPN Radio in Baton Rouge, he said effectively that was the thing that led his decision.
Starts with, honestly, like my family. Talking to them. Kids are, 10, 8, and 6 now, and hearing their input. But we're extremely happy here and love the community, love the support of Baton Rouge, and obviously being close to family. All those things, play a major role in it, especially as many times as we've moved, in the last 5 years. So I think that's where it started, and probably everything else is probably lanyap.
Consider this, and I think this is very relatable, right? Maybe you have a job that's caused you to move. I know my sister, for example, her husband works for Honeywell, is ex-military, and has a job that moved them from Baton Rouge to Kansas City. So that happens. Work causes people to. My brother lives in South Bend, Indiana now. He took a job at the University of Notre Dame. I mean, I think for a lot of people that's relatable. Maybe you're someone who's moved for your job, or you moved with your family when you were young for a parent's job. That's difficult on people. I mean, that's part of life. It doesn't matter if you're a football coach or whatever the case may be. And you heard Blake say in the last 5 years how many times they've moved. Consider this. In 2020, they were at Miami. In 2021, he was in Baton Rouge for 1 year. In 2022, he goes to Missouri, where he's there for 22 and 23 for 2 years. When Brian Kelly got hired and brought Blake Baker back, they moved 2 days after the offer. So Brian Kelly offered him within 2 days, their family was moving to Baton Rouge. That's very difficult. He's been here for 24, 25. And now for you to move to Tulane, again, that's Miami to Baton Rouge to Columbia to Baton Rouge. So that's 5 moves since 2020. That would be so hard. And then also understand, Blake Baker doesn't intend, you take the Tulane job, your intention isn't to be at Tulane for a decade. Your intention is to be there like John Summerall was. You're there for 2 years, you have really good seasons, and you springboard to a $7.5 million job in the SEC. And so you're moving again. So I think from Baker's standpoint, he's looking at his family going, can I achieve that same end, becoming a Power 4 head coach while being the defensive coordinator in Baton Rouge, making $3 million a year and pushing and trying to win a national championship at a place where my family's happy, my kids are happy, my wife went to school here, her family's, less than an hour away on the North Shore. There's a lot of things that ultimately check those boxes for Blake Baker that I think are very relatable for everyday people who have quote unquote, average jobs like you and I do. But the other part is the commitment he made to the current roster and to the recruits.
Part of it was, loyalty to current players and the recruiting class. I guess news had broke that I was taking the Tulane job, and I had a lot of the current players texting me and calling me wondering what was going on, and just the timing of the recruiting class. You're sitting here and you're telling guys that you're going to be here next year, and we need you to sign on the dotted line. And I just couldn't look at myself in the mirror and say those things and then up and leave in the next 24 hours.
We went through that. We went through that here on the show, where on Tuesday, the night before signing day, on Tuesday, Blake Baker, Lane Kiffin, the new GM Billy Glasscock were in a meeting with Bryce Brown, the head coach of Edna Carr, Richard Anderson's coach, and Richard Anderson's agent at Football Ops for 3 hours on Tuesday night. That is a thing that happened. So on Tuesday night, Blake Baker is committed to being here. And then by Thursday, he's going to be gone. I had the opportunity to speak to the parent of a member of this current signing class, who signed on Wednesday. Or I should say who signed in the signing class. I don't actually remember which day this person signed. It's irrelevant. But this person told me that on Thursday, that their conversations with Blake Baker was that he was staying. Blake Baker told him he's staying. So he's not wrong there. I mean, he's telling recruits he's staying. The current players want to know. His family wants to stay. And then how can you very quickly then just, after telling them you're staying, leave? I understand that some people might make that decision easily. For Blake Baker, that wasn't the case. Now, also, it's fair to mention that the job might not have been formally offered until Thursday. So maybe some of those conversations he had Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday changed by the time he had a formal offer on the table. But in any event, it's a major win for LSU that Blake Baker is staying for so many reasons. You keep your roster together, your signing class together. We talked about the prowess that this defense has had improving over the past 2 years. And, you also keep your staff together, which is something else Blake Baker talked about, which I want to get to that as we continue here. Stay with us. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch. Finally, giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets located within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print, and the prices include fees up front, which I love. So there's no last-second surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go, Game Time. And we're brought to you by Omaha Steaks. The holidays come with two big goals: feeding people well and finding gifts that they'll actually love. And when you want both handled in one move, Omaha Steaks is the way to go. From hosting to gifting, they deliver the world's best steak experience right to your door, because during their Sizzle All the Way sale, you can stock up and save in a huge way. 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. And it gets even better. Locked On College listeners get an extra $35 off with the code COLLEGE at checkout. There's so many options: fillets, burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts. You can build a box for anyone. And this is holiday magic made easy. Order by 6 p.m. Eastern, and it ships the same day. Save big on gourmet gifts and more, holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code COLLEGE. You know, this is also obviously an opportunity for Blake Baker returning to work with Lane Kiffin. And Baker, in this interview on Off the Bench, did kind of give his early impressions of the conversations he had with Lane Kiffin through this process.
Conversations that we had actually had in the past. I think that the style of offense they play and the style of defense that we play, very complementary to one another. But more so, you know, getting clarity. Obviously, both would be unknowns, right? Coming back here and working under a new head coach and obviously going and trying my hand at being a head coach for the first time. But also just sitting here and talking to Lane, proof's in the pudding. He's won everywhere he's been. So I think it's going to give me a unique perspective on being around another head coach that's won a lot of football games and how they run their program, how they run their organization, how they do things differently than maybe some of the great coaches I've been around in the past. So in all honesty, I think it's going to help me when I do decide to make that jump to be a head coach, because at the end of the day, I've always been preparing my whole career to one day make that jump and be a head coach.
You can tell with no uncertainty what Blake Baker's goal is. He wants to be a head coach, and he's going to be a head coach. So imagine how difficult this was to have been a guy grinding through the ranks to get to this point where not only do you have one, but two head coaching opportunities, and one of them is at your alma mater in the state that you currently coach in. So it wouldn't be like a massive cross-country move. Like, to pass on that had to be so very difficult. But hopefully for Blake Baker, he's rewarded in the end and continue to gain more from this experience of staying in Baton Rouge. But you could tell the conversations he had there with Lane Kiffin. The other thing that I do think is massively important in this entire conversation is the fact that in retaining Blake Baker, it also means LSU retains the entire defensive staff. And you're having a total staff turnover on offense, and Blake Baker staying means effectively all but one of your coaches on the defensive side of the ball stay put.
Yeah, that was definitely part of our conversation because that was important to me. These guys have earned it. Again, it wasn't just Blake Baker doing that. It starts with the coaching staff and it trickles down to the players. So, yeah, that was an important part of the conversation that I had with Lane, making sure that, we were able to stay intact. And we're still working through, exactly what everything looks like. But, again, that was an important piece of the decision.
Remember, I would argue, keep in mind also that had Blake Baker left for Tulane to be the head coach, he was very likely taking Kevin Peoples and Jake Olson with him. And one of those guys, maybe Olson, would have been his defensive coordinator. So as you heard Blake Baker say there, not only was it his opportunity to be a head coach, it was going to be a real significant opportunity for one or both of those guys, maybe a co-DC, I don't know, but it would have been an opportunity for those guys as well to have that advancement opportunity. But he wanted to make sure also that if he stayed in Baton Rouge, that staff was staying in place. And among that staff, obviously, Blake Baker has the great relationship with Peoples and Olson from their time at Missouri. Remember, they were on his defensive staff at Missouri. Then he brought them to Baton Rouge when he came down here before the 2024 season. But the Corey Raymond piece of this is probably the most significant because we've all seen this movie before. We saw it in 2021 when Ed Ogeron was fired. Brian Kelly came in. He did not retain Corey Raymond in 2022. And we all saw what happened. The DBU brand, mantra, the level of play eroded through 2023. They hit on all those guys in the portal in 2022. Joe Fouché, Greg Brooks, Jarek Bernard Converse, Mekhi Garner. But all those guys, after you're leaving after 22, you come back in 2023 and you go back into the portal for Denver Harris and Deuce Chestnut and J.K. Johnson. Zy Alexander was the one that certainly played well, but you missed on so many of those guys, and you saw the erosion of the recruiting, the misses in the portal, and you saw what LSU secondary became on what was statistically the worst defense in the history of the program in 2023. Well, you bring Corey Raymond back, and you have very quickly ascended again. Like the resume is what it is; it's undeniable. And I don't know definitively that Lane Kiffin would have retained Corey Raymond. It certainly would have made sense, but this here now and retaining Blake Baker solidifies that Corey will be back, which clearly I think we're all very, very much in favor of. Coaches have the autonomy when they take a job to do what they want to do. And had Lane Kiffin come in and wanted to turn over the defensive staff, that would have been his prerogative. You and I very likely would have disagreed, like we did with Brian Kelly in 2020 after the 21 season in his first year in 22, not retaining Corey Raymond. Same with Greg McMahon, the special teams coordinator. Look at what happened at those positions. But sometimes coaches have to learn the lesson the hard way. Thankfully, Lane Kiffin won't learn this the hard way, as Corey Raymond and the rest of that defensive staff will be retained. And the other one, though, that Blake Baker talked about was still feeling like he has more to accomplish here at LSU.
I feel like we have unfinished business here, not only from an overall team standpoint, but from a defensive standpoint. You look at the improvements from year one to year two and really want to see this thing through. I think we're an ascending football program, but especially on the defensive side of the ball, again, just the improvements from year one to year two, I don't see there any reason to take a step back moving forward.
And potentially a huge part of that will be the defensive line. Last thing here, of course, is LSU signed arguably the best defensive line class ever.
When I first took this job 2 years ago, it's what I said when I took it. It's like this place has to get back to what LSU football was always known for on the defensive side of the ball, and it starts up front. And I do believe from the bottom of my heart, we'll find out in 3 years, but I do believe we signed the best defensive line class in the country. And when you look at, it starts in state, and then we were able to spread our wings from there. But very, very pleased overall with our class, and especially up front.
Blake Baker on Off the Bench with Jacob Hester and Matt Flynn. Great interview. I'll make sure that I link that interview in the show notes if you want to listen to it in its entirety. But a major boost for Lane Kiffin here entering year one, keeping Blake Baker in a little context on why. Now they pivot to the portal, as Lane Kiffin's very excited about the transfer portal and his opportunities that will arise. Keep in mind, the portal doesn't open until the beginning of January, but you're already starting to see portal announcements from guys and their intention. And this is where teams, representatives can speak to the player's representative. You can't officially speak to a player until that player enters the portal, but every player has a representative. So it's almost like the NFL's legal tampering period. So by the time the portal opens, a lot of these decisions and deals are already made. So it is going to be a hectic next 3 weeks through the Christmas holiday and the start of the portal window. Stay tuned, but LSU will have Blake Baker in tow for all of it, and we'll be right here as well. So please smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. If you are listening on podcast, thanks so much. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.